Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer. This is another of my stories, bringing you up to date with my ongoing life. People seem to like it, they encourage me to keep going, so I thought I'd do another one. So in the last episode of my story, I was telling you about the time when I got engaged. We moved to the current house that I'm in now, and of course engagement meant to get married, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So when we moved into the house that I'm in, it's a 2-up, 2-down terrace house in Worthing. It's dated from about 1870, and there are records, and I've only really recently found out about the people who lived in here from the census from 1871 onwards. And it's interesting how the house has had numerous different people over obviously that period. But how many people were living in the house. Now, at its heyday, the house here had, the 3 kids and Dawn and I. I also think that Stanley had left, and I had a friend in called Stephen who stayed with us for a while. So there was 3 adults at one point. But it's been a very busy household. Oh, I might sneeze. I'm sorry about it. I can feel my nose going, so apologies if I do. I've been doing a bit of work in the house, and there's a lot of dust around. It's always been a dusty house actually, because of the fairly busy road outside and the not very good windows that when we moved in, these windows I think had a 20-year guarantee. They were already 10 years old. I've been here 30 years, so there's 20 years out of their guarantee, and they are tired and they need replacing. But of course, you know, double glazed windows and all of that, quite expensive. When we moved in, it was a bit of a state. The house had been a house that had been rented out for quite some time. So the house itself was brown, a dark chocolate brown, which was a horrible colour. And part of the mortgage deal was that we had to repaint the house within 6 months, which was an unusual clause, but we did do that quite willingly, really. We weren't that keen on the colour of the house ourselves. There was this brown carpet inside with a rubber backing that had perished. How people had lived in here before, I do not know, but when we lifted the carpet to see what state it was in, the black dust was everywhere, all over the place, and that was awful. But we did notice that the floorboards were quite nice. They were quite wide, spacious floorboards, although they did have gaps in them. But we were starting to think, almost the moment we moved in, that we would do up the house. The ceiling was yellow from smoking for how many years, I do not know. Excuse me. And in here, it's got this brick fireplace that you see behind me. But of course, this wasn't here. There was just this plastered, and I think a wood chip wallpaper. Wood chip wallpaper throughout was in here when we came. That was the sort of very popular thing, wasn't it, in the 70s? Anyway, so there was no central heating. There were these weird little gas boxes that you put them on, and they would eventually heat up, but they weren't very good. And here, in front of where my fireplace is now, there was this 1970s, very grim, cheap-looking brick thing with a sort of wooden mantelpiece with a gas fire in it, and that was just horrible and worked, but not very well. And when we moved in, we only had Stanley. Stanley was already born. He was about a year old. And we thought what we'll do is we'll open up the fireplace. We thought there'd be one of these little Victorian sort of shovel-shaped fireplaces, if you can know what I mean, where you put a little bit of coal. We thought that's what would be behind here. So we gaily stripped off the plaster, thinking that would be quite nice to see the brick, not knowing what state the brick was going to be in, and tried to open up the fire. Of course, the fire wasn't one of these Victorian things behind this 1970s fire. In fact, there was this gaping great hole, as we first thought, and we thought, oh my God, we're going into next door. Of course we weren't. Suddenly realised that this was the proper original hearth, and in the hearth there was the flue that went up, and we suddenly thought, even better. So we stripped this all back, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Why anyone would plaster it, I don't know. So the first thing that we thought we'd do, because we were getting cold, because it was in the autumn, and I think into the winter when we came in here, and we put a grate in. I remember going to a shop called Bunce's and buying this grate for about 30 quid, something like that. We're talking about 1991, I think, when we moved in. Put the grate in, put some logs and some coal in, which we bought from, a garage, and we didn't get warm at all. We couldn't understand it. All the heat was going straight up the flue. Somebody said, you need to have one of these firebacks, an iron fireback. So we found some iron from somewhere, goodness knows where, and we bunged it in the back there, and it was supposed to reflect the heat back into the room. It did, but not really sufficiently. So in the end, I think we looked in the Yellow Pages, because this is before we were online or anything on the internet, and I'm going to have to blow my nose. I do apologise for this. There we go. I seem to have got a lot of dust in from yesterday's clearing up, but anyway, that's another story. Do you want to know about that? So we found this wood, fire stove place, and I think it was somewhere like Barnes Green. Anyway, we drove into the countryside, and we found this place down a lane, and we bought this imported but self-assembled pot-belly stove, cast iron thing, and you had to sort of bolt it together, really, but it was relatively cheap. I can't remember exactly how much, but we didn't have a lot of money, so we got this thing and we installed it. Fortunately, the flue was all right. When we got the pipe, and the pipe sort of disappeared just a little way up the flue, and the flue was clean. I think I bought some brushes and got that clean. We lit the fire, and now with this stove, you had to run it in because it hadn't been tempered or anything, so it took a while to run it. It took 3 days. You had to have a few little lumps of coal and have it really low. So we put up with this for 3 days with barely any heat, and we were sort of like hovering around a fire in the cold, trying to do the best we can. No other real heating in here. We had an immersion heater, which I've still got, of course, for hot water and baths. And we had, I think my dad had one of these Aladdin paraffin heaters, and we borrowed one of those, and we had those portable Cala gas heaters, to try and heat the room. It was all sort of a bit Heath Robinson, really. Anyway, we put up with this for 3 days, and on the fourth day, you could then fill it up and get on with it. Well, we didn't know how much coal to put in. Well, there was a coal bunker in the back of the house, which still had some dregs of coal in it when we moved in. Since gone, concrete coal bunker. So we lit it, and we filled it up with this coal, and it's quite a big pot belly. Oh my god, the heat. It was an 8 kilowatt fire, this thing, and the heat just came out, filled this front room. We opened the doors, the actual thing glowed. It looked like it was going to melt. I was thinking, oh my God, what have we done? We opened the door, we had the windows wide open and everything. Well, this particular evening was also an evening that Dawn said to me, she said, I've completely forgot. This bloke rang up and wanted to sell insurances. I couldn't get him off the phone, and I agreed that he could come. And we had the knock at the door about 7 o'clock or something, whenever it was. So this big burly bloke came in with the heavy overcoat, because it was freezing cold outside. Heavy overcoat, jacket, scarf, the whole thing, bag full of stuff. And he came in and sat down on this second-hand sofa that we'd got from, I don't know, a second-hand shop, presumably a charity shop. Well, maybe it was given to us, who knows. Anyway, he sat down. The heat was blasting out the thing, and he had this book. I remember had this book, and he was going through all these options and what it was going to be good for us for and all of this, and he was perspiring so much. And he rapidly went through this. We weren't the slightest bit interested. We weren't, had no money to spend on these things. And he went through this so quickly, he couldn't wait to get out. I think he knew that it was a no sale, and he just went through the motions at speed and shot off. Gosh, he must have thought that we were mad. Anyway, that was a sort of a by the way, really. So we got into the house, and we knew that this was a bit of a project. We'd ummed and ahed about, should we get married, shouldn't we? We thought of it as an expense, and we weren't really that religious. But in the end, we thought about the name that Stanley, because Stanley was our only child at that time, we thought, well, when he goes to school, what name will he take? Will he take my name? Will he take a combination of my name, surname, and Dawn's surname? What will it be? And somebody had told me that if you get married, it was good for tax. And that was, sad to say, that in a way was the clincher. Although, we were very happy to get married, to be honest with you, once we'd done it. We had a registry marriage at a registry office. And the whole thing really, we couldn't afford, and our parents couldn't afford a wedding in a church. We weren't religious. We didn't really see the significance of it in that way. And we didn't have any pressure from anyone to do that. We had enough to try and deal with the house and bring up the children and try and earn a living. And so that was really part of that motivation for it. And we knew that if we were to wait too long, we may have another child. So we booked at the registry office. And we then, because I still knew the people at Dance Industry, we thought we'll have the reception at Dance Industry. And so we set the date. It was in October 22nd. I remember it well, 1991 it must have been. And away we went. The day came. And of course you need witnesses in a registry office. You can't just you two turn up and do it. So there was a small number of people, immediate family, and we had a witness. Now, in a way, this is like your best man, isn't it? One for my side. And I had friends, but I didn't really know who to ask. And then there was this business about getting there, because I couldn't drive. I mean, I could drive, but couldn't drive with Dawn. It would look a bit bad. So we needed to be driven to the church. So I asked my neighbour, who was a chap called John, who was a weightlifter. And I was on, hello terms to him. And I said, do you mind driving us up and just being a witness at my wedding? And he said, yeah, all right. And so he was my best man, effectively. A very nice chap, of course. And he drove us up in this old Citroen. I don't know it was the same little funny Citroen that James Bond had, Roger Moore, in one of those, that yellow Citroen. I think his was green, if I remember rightly. Anyway, we turned up at this, it was only a half a mile away up the road, the other side of Worthing. In Mill Road, I think it was, the registry office. And we went through the motions there, did all that. Dawn had a nice dress on. I'll share some pictures, which I do actually have. And I had this god-awful dogtooth suit. I mean, I don't know when I bought it. I bought it because I thought I was going to go to meetings and things. Anyway, I wore that. Don't think I've got it now. We went through the wedding, went from there had some photographs, went to the wedding reception. That went all right. My members of my family, well, my mum and my dad, that's basically my family at the time, came along. They were very much divorced, and I don't think my mum had seen my dad for a long time, and that was the first time they'd seen each other. And Dawn's father came, but Dawn's mother didn't come because Dawn's father came. So both of us came from broken families, and all of this was a bit odd. But it was great. It was nice, and people kept saying to me, "Are you all right, Richard? How's it going? How did it feel to be married?" And because I'd been doing lots of entertaining and juggling and unicycling and gigging, and still doing the extra work, I said, "Well, do you know, it really is just like another gig, only I'm still performing to everyone, I'm smiling and all that, but I haven't had to do any juggling." It was a most peculiar thing, getting married. And as I say, we were pleased to be married. The event for me was, I don't know, it was just a bit odd. It was just something we had to go through doing, but it was fun, I suppose. I'm not putting any negative connotations on it at all. It's just, you know, when you see everybody else's weddings, they all look fantastic and fabulous and people were all dressed up. I'd only ever been to one wedding before I'd been married. I hated going to weddings, and I'd only ever been to one funeral. I hate those, just don't like those very formal occasions. I don't know, it's something to do, I think, with the fact that my family life as a kid felt that family life was a bit odd. Because of the way my parents broke up, and that my mum was an alcoholic and my dad was pretty much he wasn't that interested in the kids, and you know, he was building his business, so I know kind of what that's like. But so I felt like the family unit was not something that I embraced, and so hence not rushing to get married before having Stanley. And then after the wedding and after the reception, people went home, we cleared up, we came back, and that was it. With no honeymoon, nothing terribly extravagant or anything like that. It was like, well, we're married. We're married now with one kid. And yeah, we were like that. I think we were married for 14 or 15 years. So it's quite some time. Was it that? Maybe not that long. Maybe it was 12 years. I'm trying to remember how old Stanley was when we got separated. I think we were married long because we got separated much later on. We separated rather, and then it was about 3 years later that or 4 or 5 years, or even might have been longer than that. It might have been 10 years actually that we got. It was quite a long time after we had parted and we were separate that we actually got divorced. Not for any reason, that there was no rush to do it. But anyway, there we are. That's my story of my wedding. It's unusual, isn't it? Maybe not as unusual as you think. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe. And no doubt I will be back. I think the week that I'm filming this, the weather is very windy and it's a bit all over the place. So I'm not quite sure when I will be out and about filming again. But thank you for watching this. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe. As I say, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if not, then don't worry. Till next time, bye-bye.